Hey, all. So we are now here to finish. What we've done, we've looked at the Russian Revolution from the causes of the revolutions of February Revolution. We talked about the failures of the February Revolution, the provisional government. We've talked about the November Revolution, and now we're going to look at the Russian Civil War from 1819 to 1920. A devastating civil war occurred, as you see just the chaos that's going on the map behind you. It's fought between two groups. The first group is going to be the whites, and the whites are going to be they're going to support the czar. That's why we call them the whites. The white flag typically reflected royalty, so they're going to take under the umbrella of the whites. The whites are a coalition of royalists, Mensheviks, liberals, social revolutionaries, various nationalities such as the Ukrainians. And again, and also put royalists. Make sure you remember the royalists. And they're supported by the Entente powers with both resources and soldiers. Especially in 1918, the Entente feared that with Russia pulling out of the war, it would really cause chaos in the Western Front. And we'll see how that plays out in the next lesson. The Reds are the Bolshevik forces. The Reds reflect revolutionary Marxism. They're united under the militant Trotsky. Yes, Lenin is the political leader, but Trotsky, he is the militant leader. He is the guy who's going to organize the Red forces, and they're really going to lead into victory. And the Reds control the political bureaucracy. So all of the things of the Russian government with resources, wealth, and these other elements, they're going to have access to that. And the whites are more of a marginalized group. How do the Reds win the Civil War? And well, really, we're going to start with the whites. What were the problem with the whites? First, they lack leadership. Who are you fighting for? Are you fighting for the military? Are you fighting for the czar? Are you fighting for your own nationality? Who's the leader? What's going to happen? And this hodgepodge really doesn't have any leadership. And with that, they're not unified. They're defined by their differences. One of the most significant things is once the Reds were forced off of the Ukrainian soil, the Ukrainian nationalists stopped fighting because they had achieved their goal. So without this lack of unity, they're really going to divide. And this is the great irony, right? The whites are the conservative forces, and yet they're going to be defined by their differences. They're not the new right of France or the new right of Spain that we'll see later. And there was a sense of Russian xenophobia. If you don't know what xenophobia is, it's the fear of outside world. The Russians, they appreciated their own unique culture. And all of a sudden, along with the whites, you had Japanese soldiers fighting with them. You had American soldiers. You had French soldiers. And the Russian xenophobia really exaggerated those differences. And they were frustrated. Who are we fighting for? And the outcome of that, it really added to this unity. Well, this follows us with the strengths of the Reds. Trotsky's leadership, absolutely powerful. One of my favorite things to mention is he had a no step back mentality policy. If they're entering, they're having an offensive against the whites. If anybody tried to retreat, they would get shot in the head. Trotsky promised, we have life forward. If you retreat, you die. So how many Reds are going to retreat? Probably not a lot. And there's a sense of unity. This is where Lenin's cult of personality is really going to become significant because the people in the Reds, they were fighting for a cause. They were fighting for an ideology they believed. And Trotsky does a fantastic job in implementing Leninism. Trotsky does not take advantage of this for his own good. He wants to create that sense of unity and that concept of war communism. War communism is when Lenin centralized all the resources for the cause of war. McKay overstates it. We'll criticize it a little bit later, but I just want to point out the Reds had war communism, centralizing of sources, and ultimately the Reds are going to have a relatively easy pathway to victory by the time we get to 1920. So as we conclude here, the First World War created an immediate atmosphere for that revolutions. The misery, the millions of people's dead, the lack of competent leadership, the lack of public opinion driving anything, that people weren't heard. It created the atmosphere, not just for one, but a second revolution. Both the Tsar and provisional government failed to support public opinion, and because of that, Lenin was able to manipulate this opportunity to forge his own vision for the future of Russia. And I think, again, another ironic aspect is because Lenin believed he had the right way to see the world, he will ignore public opinion. But by the time he gained power, he had the power of the army, power of the government. In the end, there was very little that could be done to undo this. And that's where we are. I hope that makes sense. Y'all have a good one.